As with most video games, WoW has had its fair share of bugs and poorly implemented ideas over its 10-year run. This video will talk about a few of those things in a list-style video, because videos always get more views this way. Number 10 on this list is wall jumping. Before patch 2.4, every slope in the game was just a giant set of really small stair steps, which meant you could easily jump over almost any terrain, even walls going at a straight 90-degree angle. But they eventually smoothed out all surfaces to be more smooth and less like stairs, nearly killing all wall jumping entirely. Number 9 on this list is actually something that happened in a beta build and didn't actually make it to live. For a short time in Wrath of the Lich King's beta, Blizzard accidentally made the Druid spell Typhoon have a 0 mana cost and cooldown, and it didn't trigger the GCD. You could literally cast it hundreds of times per second. There's a reason all abilities have a global cooldown. There were many other broken things that happened in various beta builds, but I'll only include the Typhoon bug on this list. Number 8 is a bugged ability that did make it to live. Sub-rogues have this ability called Honor Among Thieves, which back in the early days of Wrath gave you a combo point every time someone in your group got a crit. While this ability did have a 1-second cooldown, it was bugged to also grant a combo point to other rogues with this talent in your group. What this meant was you could just plop 5 sub-rogues in one group, and they could all be able to spam 5 combo point moves every global cooldown from just a ridiculous influx of combo points from their crits. And unlike most bugs that are this broken, this one actually managed to stay in the game for a few weeks before being fixed. Number 7 on this list was not really a bug and more just an OP game mechanic. Vanilla Shamans had this weapon enchant called Windfury, which gave them a 20% chance per hit to hit an additional 2 times instantly. But here's the kicker, those 2 attacks could also proc Windfury, which would hit an additional 2 times, which also had a chance to proc Windfury, and so on and so on. Meaning you could in theory one-shot a raid boss if you were really lucky, but one-shotting people in PvP with a nice slow weapon was more likely and commonplace. Number 6 is another vanilla ability, and that's the Warrior's Battle Shout. Battle Shout generated threat for every member that got the buff. It was also a significant amount of threat. You could do nothing but spam Battle Shout to tank all the ads in Nefarian, or any other fight with a lot of ads. You could tank most bosses by just spamming Battle Shout too. It was the best kept secret of vanilla tanking. Number 5 on this list is a little bug that most people missed. It was only in the game for about 5 hours total and involved paladins. It was a few months into patch 4.3 and guilds were still having issues on fights like Heroic Spine and Madness, with only 200 to 300 guilds worldwide bringing them down. Blizzard pushed out one of their hotfix patches late one night across all realms. For some reason in this patch, however, something went terribly wrong with Wet Pallies. For some reason, the dot from the Ret Pally Seal of Truth was doing something in the realm of constantly reapplying versions of itself when it ticked, enabling it to do exponentially insane, near instantaneous amounts of super damage. People in BGs like Arathai Basin were complaining of Ret Pallies walking up to people and taking them out instantly, and the Ret Pally Seal of Truth dot was doing so much damage it would disconnect some of the Paladin's opponents from the game. The guilds online at the time of this bug took full advantage of it, and went headlong into Heroic Dragon Soul to wreck bosses with this insane damage. The amount of guilds that killed Heroic Madness doubled and then some overnight. It wasn't until 5 hours after the hotfix had gone out that Blizzard was able to re-hotfix the Seal of Truth bug to return Ret Pallies to their normal state. Blizzard considered banning the guilds that killed Heroic Madness in this manner, but then decided not to because the Paladin didn't have to do anything out of the ordinary in their DPS rotation to trigger it, so they weren't really at fault. I actually remember the bug. I used to lead a raid in the late night group on my hunter, and we were done for the night and I was about to log off when one of our rogues says, "Hey, I heard something really cool about paladins. Let's do the next boss real quick and I'll show you." So he hopped on his pally, we went to Altraxion, and he died in less than 20 seconds. We all then logged off because it was super late, and it was fixed by the next morning. Number 4 on this list is a trash drop. You know how when you loot corpses and sometimes get weapons and armor that are great quality with terrible stats that are clearly meant to just be vendored? Well, in early Wrath, there was a particular sword called the Quenched Sord that dropped from a particular Wrath mob, which had the stats of a really bad eye level 200 weapon, only with no level requirement. This made the sword the best twink weapon for any class that could use two-handed swords. Later, it was eventually fixed and given a level 70 requirement, turning it back into just vendor trash. There was also a fishing pole similar to this weapon back in early Cataclysm, with eye level 200 stats with no level requirement, but it was a little harder to get and fixed a lot faster. Number 3 on this list is a quest item called the Drowned Lizard Tail. You get the item from a fishing daily from Orgrimmar. It doesn't do any damage and was just used to kill fishes for the daily. But for a short time, it didn't delete its stuff from your inventory after using it, and it could be used multiple times before triggering its cooldown. While not as bad as a Typhoon bug from the Wrath beta, since it did eventually trigger a cooldown, it did have a thunder effect, which, if triggered multiple times in a row, would lag everyone near you and straight up crash people without strong computers. So, while you couldn't just instant kill people with this bugged item, you could go around and simply lag them out to the point where they couldn't fight back. I should probably note that it didn't lag out the person using the item nearly as bad as everyone else. The reason this item is higher on the list than the Typhoon bug is because this bug actually made it to life. And now for number 2 on this list. Well, number 2 will actually be a collection of different notable raid bugs. First up, the Disgusting Oozeling exploit. Back in vanilla, the pet Disgusting Oozeling gave you a nature resistance debuff and turned you green. For whatever reason, the debuff allowed you to stay in the stomach of Cthulhu permanently, which somewhat trivialized a major encounter feature. Exodus used a bug to get the first Yogg 0 kill by having a Holy Pally turn on their threat buff and gaining healing aggro on all the adds from phase 3 outside, and causing them to evade. Again, trivializing a major encounter feature. Their kill was taken away and everyone was banned for 72 hours. A particular raiding guild found out that by deleting certain files from their WoW folders, they could get rid of the platform under the first boss in AQ40, and go straight to Cthulhu without clearing the rest of the instance. Although, this wasn't really a broken thing in the game and pretty much straight up exploiting. And finally, one of the more famous raid bugs involved the first heroic Lich King kill. You see, Serenite bombs would regrow the platform around the ring that spawned during the intermission phases, which allowed you to ignore certain mechanics during the main phases. There are quite a few other broken raiding things, but that's enough of that. On to the number 1 broken thing in WoW's history. The number 1 broken thing in all of WoW's history is Season 5 Death Knights, or early Wrath Death Knights for all you non-PvPers out there. Now, why were Season 5 Death Knights so broken? Well, they were the first hero class in WoW, and for whatever reason Blizzard thought it necessary to make everything about them as overpowered as possible. In addition to having high damage and self-healing, Death Knights had an ability called Glyph of Death and Decay, which gave every tickler Death and Decay a chance to horror people for 2 seconds. Horrors are basically stuns, so if you didn't run out of the D&D AoE fast enough, you could essentially get stun locked. The original Chains of Ice was arguably the best slow ever put in the game. At first, it would freeze a target in place for 3 seconds, similar to Mage's Frost Nova. Then, after it ended, they would be slowed from 100% to 90% to 80% and so on, every second until they got all of their speed back after 10 seconds. You know the DK's battle res they have today? Well, originally it brought players back as a ghoul for 4 minutes and could be used in arenas. So, did your partner happen to die in arena? No problem, just raise him back as a ghoul and he could leap all over the place, and he even had a sweet little stun. But what's that? Your opponent actually managed to kill you in the arena? No worries, thanks to the talent Shadow of Death, you'd simply come back to life for 45 seconds. The original Icebound Fortitude had a 1 minute cooldown and reduced damage taken by 50% for 12 seconds, in addition to making you immune to stuns. The other damage reduction cooldown on a 1 minute cooldown is Barkskin, and that only reduces damage by 20%. Most 50% damage reducers are on 3 to 5 minute long cooldowns, because 50% reduction is a crazy high amount. Oh, and if you happen to be a Frost DK, it lasted 18 seconds. The original Anti-Magic Shell only had a 15-second cooldown. The original Plague Strike removed a hot every time it hit, making Druids super easy kill targets for DKs. Unlike other dispels that removed a wide range of magic effects like buffs and shields, this one specifically only targeted heals over time, which was kind of amazing. In addition to the strike, the blood plague it applied had a chance every time it ticked to remove another haunt. Druids just could not catch a break. And there were quite a few other pretty OP things about Season 5 Death Knights, but I think I've made my point. And that's it for the top 10 broken things in WoW. I should probably mention the Wreck Bomb, a short-lived ability that a paladin used to solo a raid boss, only because I know I'll hear about it in the comments for not listing it. It is probably one of the most broken things in WoW, but everyone and their mom already knows about it, and I wanted to include more lesser-known things in this list.